Now we come to 22.57, a Savatthi. Monks. A monk who is skilled in 7 cases and a triple investigator is called in this Dhammavinaya a consummate one who has fully lived the holy life, the highest kind of person. And how monks is a monk skilled in 7 cases? Here monks, a monk understands body, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading to its cessation. He understands the gratification, the danger, and the escape in the case of body. He understands feeling, perception, volition, consciousness, their origin, cessation, and the way leading to cessation. He understands the gratification, danger, and escape in the case of the aggregates. Stop here for a moment. So here, when the Buddha talks about 7 cases, it means first the element, the aggregate. That means either body or feeling or perception, volition or consciousness. So the aggregate, then how it originates, how it ceases, and the way leading to its cessation. So there are four cases already. And then the gratification, danger and escape, another 3 cases. So the 4 plus 3 becomes 7. And what monks is body? 4 great elements and the form derived from the 4 great elements, that is called form or body. With the arising of nutriment, there is the arising of body. With the cessation of nutriment, there is the cessation of body. This noble eightfold path is the way leading to the cessation of body. That is, right view, right thoughts, etc., up down to right concentration. Stop here for a moment. So here, when you say body, you refer to the 4 great elements and the form derived from the 4 great elements. And then body arises from nutriment. When there is a nutriment for the body, the body will arise. And then when there is no nutriment, then the body will cease. But that is temporary ceasing. Permanent ceasing is the Noble Eightfold Path leading to the permanent ceasing of body. The pleasure and joy that arise in dependence on body, that is the gratification in body. That body is impermanent, suffering and subject to change. This is the danger in body. The removal and abandonment of desire and lust for body, this is the escape from body. Let's stop here for a moment. Here, as we discussed 1 or 2 nights ago, gratification in body is the joy, the pleasure you get from seeing the body, for example, seeing a 16-year-old girl at the height of her beauty. And then the danger in body is that it is impermanent and it is suffering. How? As I quoted in the suttas, the Buddha said, imagine the beautiful 16-year-old girl. After some time, when she becomes sick, then she lies on the bed, cannot move, cannot get up from the bed, and passing urine and shit on the bed, and she cannot help herself. Got to be lifted up by some, got to be fed by others, got to be bathed by others, and then looking so weak and all that. And then all the loveliness has disappeared. Or the Buddha says, now imagine when she's 80 or 90 or 100 years old, all the hair has turned white or bald, and the teeth has gone, and the skin is all wrinkled and blotchy, and she might be hunchback and walking with a stick, shivering, so weak. So that also, you see the danger, the Buddha says. And then finally she will die and turn into a corpse, and the corpse will be smelly and bloated and blue-black and oozing liquid from the 9 openings. So that is the danger in the body. And then the escape is to remove desire and lust for the body. That is the escape of having a body again. Buddha continued. Whatever ascetics and Brahmins, having thus directly known body, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading to its cessation, having thus directly known the gratification, danger, the escape in the case of body, are practicing for the purpose of revulsion towards body, for its fading away and cessation. They are practicing well. Those who are practicing well have gained a foothold in this Dhamma Vinaya. Stop here for a moment. So, if we understand the Dhamma, so even though we have not let go of attachment to the body and the mind, but we slowly try to see more clearly how the body and the mind is a source of suffering. So we are practicing towards letting go. So if we are practicing towards letting go of this body and mind and the world, then we are practicing well, we have understood the Dhamma Vinaya. And whatever ascetics and Brahmins, having thus directly known body, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading to its cessation, having thus directly known the gratification, danger, and escape in the case of body, through revulsion towards body, through its fading away and cessation, are liberated by non-clinging. They are well liberated. Those who are well liberated are consummate ones. As to those consummate ones, there is no round for describing them. So, if a person has totally let go of this body, then he becomes liberated. Then he does not go on the round of rebirths anymore. And what monks is feeling? There are these 6 classes of feeling. Feeling born of eye contact, feeling born of ear contact, feeling born of nose contact, feeling born of tongue contact, feeling born of body contact, feeling born of mind contact. This is called feeling. With the arising of contact, there is the arising of feeling. The cessation of contact, there is the cessation of feeling. This Noble Eightfold Path is the way leading to the cessation of feeling. Stop here for a moment. So feeling arises because of contact at the 6 sense doors. Our eye, ear, nose, tongue, body and mind are the 6 sense organs, and when the object of these 6 sense bases come close by, and then we sense them, there is contact. So with the contact, feeling arises. The pleasure and joy that arise in dependence on feeling, this is the gratification in feeling. That feeling is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change. This is the danger in feeling. The removal and abandonment of desire and lust for feeling. This is the escape from feeling. Whatever ascetics and Brahmins, having thus directly known feeling, its origin, cessation, and the way leading to its cessation, having thus directly known the gratification, danger, and escape in the case of feeling, are practicing for the purpose of revulsion towards feeling, for its fading away and cessation. They are practicing well. Those who are practicing well have gained a foothold in this Dhamma Vinaya. So similarly, the Buddha says, if a person understands these things, the aggregate, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading to its cessation, understands the gratification, danger, and escape, then we are practicing for the purpose of revulsion, letting go. Whatever ascetics and Brahmins, having thus directly known feeling, etc., those are consummate ones. So those who have totally let go feeling, then they become liberated. And what monks is perception? There are these 6 classes of perception. Perception of forms, perception of sounds, perception of smells, perception of taste, perception of touch, perception of thoughts. This is called perception. With the arising of contact, there is the arising of perception. With the cessation of contact, there is the cessation of perception. This Noble Eightfold Path is the way leading to the cessation of perception. Let's stop here for a moment. So just now we said with contact, feeling arises. After feeling, you have perception. That means you perceive, like for example, you see something, you perceive that it's yellow or blue or white, whatever. The pleasure and joy that arise in dependence on perception, that is the gratification in perception. That perception is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change. This is the danger in perception. The removal and abandonment of desire and lust for perception, that is the escape from perception. Similarly, whatever ascetic and Brahmins understand this and they let go, they are consummate ones. And what monks are volitions? There are 6 classes of volition. Volition regarding forms, sounds, smells, taste, touch, and thoughts. This is called volition. With the arising of contact, there is a arising of volition. With the ceasing of contact, there is a ceasing of volition. The Noble Eightfold Path is the way leading to the cessation of volition. The pleasure and joy that arise in dependence on volition, this is the gratification in volition. That volition is impermanent, suffering and subject to change, is the danger in volition. The removal and abandonment of desire and lust for volition, that is the escape from volition. And what is consciousness? There are these 6 classes of consciousness: eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, mind consciousness. This is called consciousness. The arising of mentality and materiality, nama-rupa, there is the arising of consciousness. With the cessation of nama-rupa, there is the cessation of consciousness. This Noble Eightfold Path is the way leading to the cessation of consciousness. Stop here for a moment. Consciousness is said to arise because of nama-rupa, because as I mentioned before, consciousness and nama-rupa, consciousness, the Pali is vijnana, nama-rupa, the translation is mentality, materiality, and you can consider that to be phenomena. What consciousness is conscious of. When consciousness arises, it must be conscious of something. That something is nama-rupa. So in English we call that phenomena. So, and these two, consciousness and mentality, materiality, they always rise together and cease together. They cannot exist one by itself. They must always exist together and cease together. They are a pair. Siamese twins joined to each other. The pleasure and joy that arise in dependence on consciousness, that is the gratification in consciousness. That consciousness is impermanent, suffering and subject to change. This is the danger in consciousness. The removal and abandonment of desire and lust for consciousness, that is the escape. Whatever ascetics and Brahmins, having thus directly known consciousness, its origin, cessation, way leading to its cessation, having thus directly known the gratification, danger and escape in the case of consciousness, are practicing for the purpose of revulsion towards consciousness, or its fading away and cessation. They are practicing well. Those who are practicing well have gained a foothold in this Dhammavinaya. Whatever ascetics and Brahmins, having thus directly known consciousness, its origin, cessation, and the way leading to its cessation, having thus directly known gratification, danger and escape in the case of consciousness, through revulsion towards consciousness, through its fading away and cessation, are liberated by non-clinging. They are well liberated. Those who are well liberated are consummate ones. As to those consummate ones, there is no round for describing them. This in such a way that a monk is skilled in 7 cases. And how monks is a monk a triple investigator? Here monks, a monk investigates by way of the elements, by way of the sense basis, and by way of dependent origination. It is in such a way that a monk is a triple investigator. Monks, a monk who is skilled in these 7 cases and a triple investigator is called, in this Dhammavinaya, a consummate one who has fully lived the holy life, the highest kind of person. So here finally the Buddha says we should investigate by 3 ways. One is by way of the elements. The elements are the dhatus. We went through the Samyutta called the Dhatu-samyutta, I think it was chapter 14. And then the sense basis, we haven't come, that is chapter 35, Salayatana Samyutta. And then the third one is dependent origination. That one we went through already, chapter 12, Nidana Samyutta. So, although it does not mention, since he has already gone through just now, another way of investigating is the 5 aggregates. In fact, the 5 aggregates are the most important. And if we investigate the 5 aggregates, then we can become an Arya. So that's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha is saying the 5 aggregates, we have to understand the aggregate itself, how it arises, how it ceases, and the way leading to its cessation. And also you have to understand the gratification, the satisfaction that comes from that aggregate, the danger in that aggregate, they escape from that aggregate. So these are the 7 cases. The next sutta is 22.58 at Savatthi. The Buddha said, monks, the Tathagata Arahan Sammasambuddha, liberated by non-clinging through revulsion towards body, through its fading away and cessation, is called a perfectly enlightened one. A monk liberated by wisdom, liberated by non-clinging through revulsion towards body, through its fading away and cessation, is called one liberated by wisdom. The Tathagata Arahan, perfectly enlightened one, a Sammasambuddha, liberated by non-clinging through revulsion towards feeling, perception, volition, consciousness, through the fading away and cessation, is called a Sammasambuddha. A monk liberated by wisdom, liberated by non-clinging through revulsion towards feeling, perception, volition, consciousness, through the fading away and cessation, is called one liberated by wisdom. Therein, monks, what is the distinction? What is the disparity? What is the difference between the Tathagata Arahan Sammasambuddha and a monk liberated by wisdom? Let's stop here for a moment. This is also one important sutta. So the Buddha is saying that a Buddha is liberated because of revulsion of the 5 aggregates, and he does not cling to the 5 aggregates. And the disciple, the Arahant disciple, it becomes liberated in the same way by understanding the aggregates and then becoming disenchanted with the aggregates, seeing revulsion and then stop clinging to them, and then he also becomes liberated. So here the Buddha is saying, what is the difference between a Buddha and his disciple liberated? You see, during the Buddha's time, the Buddha is called the Arahant, Tathagata, Sammasambuddha. The monk disciples are not called Arahants, The monk disciples are called monk liberated by wisdom, or a monk liberated by mind, or a monk liberated both ways. Both ways means liberated by wisdom as well as liberated by mind. So the Buddha only is called the Arahant, and then later people don't understand. Then they differentiate between the Buddha and the Arahant and say the Arahant has not finished his work, whereas the Buddha has finished his work. But we find in the suttas, the Buddha says, after you see the rest of the sutta, there's practically no difference between the Buddha and the Arahant disciple. And then the disciple said, Venerable Sir, our teachings are rooted in the Blessed One, guided by the Blessed One. Take recourse in the Blessed One. It would be good if the Blessed One would clear up the meaning of this statement. Having heard it from him, the monks will remember it. So here the Buddha is asking them, what's the difference between the teacher, the Buddha, and his disciple liberated by wisdom? And they could not explain, so they asked the Buddha to kindly explain. Then listen and attend closely, monks, I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, the monks replied. The Blessed One said, the Tathagata monks, Arahant Sammasambuddha, is the originator of the path, unarisen before, the producer of the path, unproduced before, the declarer of the path, undeclared before. He is the knower of the path, the discoverer of the path, the one skilled in the path, and his disciples now dwell following that path and become possessed of it afterwards. This, monks, is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between the Tathagata, Arahant, Sammasambuddha, and a monk liberated by wisdom. That's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha is saying that the Buddha is the one who first discovered the path. The path here means the Noble Eightfold Path. So the Noble Eightfold Path is a path that is practiced by all Buddhas and all Arahants. Anyone who wants to become liberated must practice this Noble Eightfold Path. This is the one and only way for liberation. Nowadays, people confuse learners by saying there are 84,000 Dhamma doors. The Buddha never mentioned even once that there are 84,000 Dhamma doors. The Buddha always says there's only one path to Nibbana, one path to liberation, Only one and no other path, and that is the Noble Eightfold Path. So here the Buddha says that he is the one who has rediscovered the Noble Eightfold Path. He is the first to bring it back to this world. Okay, and he is very familiar with the path. He teaches the path. And he teaches his disciples the same path. And his disciples also follow him, practicing the same path. In other words, the path that the Buddha walks and his Arahant disciple walks is no different at all. It's just that the Buddha is the first Arahant and the others are later Arahants. So the Buddha said that is the only distinction, the difference between Arahant, the Buddha and his disciples are liberated by wisdom. So you see here, in the Buddha's own words, he says actually there's no difference between him and his disciples. Only he is the first Arahant and they are later Arahants. Well, nowadays people don't understand. They make such a big distinction between the Buddha and the Arahant disciples. And they come up with a lot of things that the Buddha never said before. All that rubbish which the Buddha said. It's not found in the original suttas. Those are the words of disciples. Things like paramis, that the Buddha cultivated paramis for such a long time. 4 asankhya kappas and 100 mahakappas. Now when you look into the suttas, there's not a single sutta where the Buddha spoke about parami. The Buddha also never heard the word parami. We are so smart, we are smarter than the Buddha. We talk about parami. The Buddha doesn't understand what is parami. So this it's very misleading when you talk about parami and that you have to cultivate paramis over such a long time. And then when you look closely, where do you find these teachings about the parami? They come from the Jataka stories. And the Jataka stories are so childish, and yet so many people believe in them. The deer can speak, the rabbit can talk like a human being. The rabbit can behave smarter than a human being. The story, the Jataka about the rabbit, he saw the hunter hunting the whole day in the forest. He could not kill any animal, so he was boiling the water, very hungry and nothing to eat. And according to the Jataka story, our Bodhisattva in the previous life was this rabbit. He saw this poor hunter, nothing to eat. He jumped into the boiling water, committed suicide for the hunter to eat. Such childish stories, a lot of people believe. And even the stories about the Buddha, Vesantara, Jataka, because he wanted to perfect his parami of giving, he gave away his wife and 2 children to a heartless beggar. He knows the beggar will beat them, will make them suffer and all that. Still he gave them away, which contradicts the Buddha's teachings. The Buddha says a wise man's charity must not harm himself, must not harm others. So in the case of this Vesantara Jataka, he harms his wife, he harms his 2 children, and he harms himself. All for what? So it's very silly, a lot of silly teachings now taught. In fact, talking about cultivating the paramis over 4 asankhya kappas and 100 mahakappas, we find in the suttas that the Buddha only took 3 lifetimes to get out of samsara. Not even one world cycle, 3 lifetimes. The Buddha said in a previous life, in this kappa, in this world, in this present earth, he met the Buddha Kassapa. And when he met the Buddha Kassapa, he was a Brahmin, so he had no interest to see the Buddha Kassapa. His good friend, the pot maker, Gatikara, asked him to go many times. He refused until the Gatikara pulled him by the hair. Then only he had to go. Then when he went to see the Buddha Kassapa, he refused to pay respect to the Buddha Kassapa. But the Buddha Kassapa, because Gatikara pleaded with the Buddha to teach his friend, the Bodhisattva, some Dhamma, then the Buddha Kassapa taught him some Dhamma. After hearing that Dhamma, he must have attained stream entry because he changed completely and became a monk. After becoming a monk, he must have attained at least the first jhana, because According to the suttas, after that birth, he went up to the Tusita heaven for a long time. But he came back to this same earth. That means within this same world cycle, he was born as Siddhartha Gautama. After being born as Siddhartha Gautama, as a small boy, about 10 years old, he could attain the first jhana under the jambu tree. So that shows he had probably attained the first jhana. And if he had already attained the first jhana under the Buddha Kassapa, I'm quite sure he would have become a Sakadagamin. So he is a Sakadagamin. His time to enter Nibbana is ripe. The Sakadagamin is called a once returner. He comes back to the human rebirth only one more time. He must enter Nibbana. From there we can understand why Siddhartha Gautama, with such a rich, wealthy, happy family, he gave up everything and went into the jungle and lived an ascetic life until he became enlightened. That can only happen because he's a Sakadagamin. An ordinary person cannot do that. People will say, you've gone out of your mind. Such a happy family, you live and you go off and become a beggar. So you see, a lot of things in the suttas, if you study carefully, is completely different from later books like the Jatakas and the Abhidhamma and the commentaries and all that. Okay, I think I'll stop here. Anything to discuss? I find it a bit strange, Some people, they listen to my talks and then they are shocked. You see, all the Sunday schools are teaching the children about the Jataka stories and the Paramis and all that. Nobody pointed out that all these are not the Buddha's teachings. You see, we read the suttas about Mara-samyutta. Mara is very powerful. So you cannot escape from me, you cannot escape from samsara. Yeah. What page? Yeah. When you practice the Noble Eightfold Path, you are practicing Sila, Samadhi and Panya. So when you have Samadhi, you will see things as they clearly, as they truly are. So you will understand the five aggregates as they truly are. So when you understand the five aggregates as they truly are, then you will let go of the five aggregates. Yeah. 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 Not necessary. But then generally, if you study the Dhamma, then you study all. You will study the elements, you will study the six senses, you will study dependent origination, you will study the five aggregates, everything. But if you specialize in one, like for example, five aggregates, you understand it, and it's enough. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Yes, you can use your own inclination, but one thing you have to bear in mind that they are quite related. Quite related. Yeah. Correct. Yes, yeah. Yeah, that's it. Mm. Even though during the Buddha's time, disciples of the Buddha disrobed, but I'm quite sure the percent is much less than now. Now, because the teacher is not Samma Sambuddha who can read your mind, so more people disrobe. And during the Buddha's time, those who disrobe, I think they don't have wisdom. Because we look into the cases, there was one, after he disrobed, he was talking bad about the Buddha. And he said, according to the sutta, it seems one of the reasons why he disrobed was that he kept asking the Buddha to show him psychic power. And the Buddha refused to show him psychic power, so he assumed that the Buddha had no psychic power. And then he said, those external ascetics are so ascetic, they practice all kinds of what we call ku sing, ascetic practices, austerities, whereas the Buddha never practiced. What he didn't realize was the Buddha had gone through all the austerities more than the ascetics, other ascetics. But because the Buddha found that they were quite useless, then the Buddha only adopted those that were beneficial, like eating one meal a day, going on alms round, wearing only one set of robes. So that the Buddha calls a middle path, but to some people it's already very ascetic. So if a person has got some Buddha as your teacher, and you still fail to make the grade, then you must be something wrong with you, not the teacher. Sometimes you find, like in the case I just mentioned just now, that guy had no wisdom at all. On the other hand, there are some like Devadatta, it was because of the ego and the greed for fame, for offerings. So it's mentioned in the sutta, because he showed his psychic power to the prince was so impressed. Every day offered him the 2 meals, breakfast and dinner, and each meal 500 dishes were offered to him. And if he had any decency in him, if he was really a monk, he would not want to accept 500 dishes every meal. For him to accept 500 dishes every meal shows that the ego is so big. He thinks he deserves it. So such a person, even before he left the Buddha already foresaw. That's why there's one sutta about the Buddha saying that different disciples of the various monks, they are the same type. Like those that follow Venerable Sariputta, all of great wisdom. Those that follow Mahamoggallana, all have great psychic power. Those that follow Mahakassapa, all very ascetic. The Buddha said, those that follow Devadatta are all very greedy, evil desires. So that's why our motive in wearing the robe is very important. Different people come to wear the robe for different reasons. Because nowadays you find many they come to cari makan because they think go out and work it's very hard life. You have to slog, get scolded by the boss and all that, get a lot of pressure and all that. Here you just go on arms round and come back, do a bit of sweeping and then you can sleep, eat and sleep. Some people think like that. They don't know that all this is they are taking on a credit card. As one of the suttas say, Brother Ui pointed out, you haven't become an Arya, you don't deserve. So, much dust in the eyes. Actually, during the Buddha's time also, because it's mentioned in the sutta that the Buddha taught the Dhamma, and then those people who have suffering in the world, then when the Buddha explains, then they see there's a way out. There's a way out of their suffering. Because unless you go out into the world and experience suffering, you don't know what suffering is. After you experience suffering, then you come and wear the robe. If you wear it for the purpose of ending your suffering, that is good, then you will strive, you see. But like nowadays, like you mentioned the Buddhist countries, the poor Buddhist countries, nowadays you find because some Buddhist families, they are very poor, they send their children to become monks and nuns. At the age of 8 years old or 10 years old, they send them to wear the robe. And they wear the robe for the rest of their life. And these people, they did not come into monkhood to cultivate, to practice to get out of samsara. They come into monkhood to cari makan, to have a means of livelihood. Such people, they are not going to strive generally. That's why you find a lot of Buddhist countries, over a period of time, then Buddhism deteriorates. Because the people who come into monkhood, their purpose is not to strive. And sometimes people come into monkhood too young. Later, they don't see suffering. They still think they want to enjoy some more. So then they disrobe. But if, say, they come into life, come into the robes after 30, then it's the best. I think, unless they are very gifted people, there are some, they come and within a short while, they attain Aryahood or Arahanthood. But those are exceptions. Generally, I think if a person has already worked for some time, has enjoyed some of the worldly pleasures, and then he comes and wears the robe, then he is no more, he doesn't have false ideas about the outside world. Whatever that needs to be enjoyed, he has already enjoyed it. Then he won't be easily attracted to the outside world. I see some Westerners, they come into monkhood very early. They go hitchhiking and they go to Thailand. They know about Buddhism suddenly. At the age of 20-something, very young, early 20s, they become a monk. That's very dangerous because maybe they have not tasted enough of the world. And later, at the age of 50, many of them disrobe. So it's best to taste the world first. Because you come to monkhood too late in life, also very difficult. Because you have very fixed habits, and then your ego is also quite fixed already. So it's very difficult to change. Like the suttas say, old monk, if the young monk, but more senior, ask him to do this, he cannot do that and all that, they get annoyed. This fellow can be my grandson, teaching me how to do this, not to do that and all that. This forest tradition, there are good and the bad points about it. The good point is that it encourages a monk to live in the forest monastery, which is quite ideal for practice. But if a monk wants to progress, he must study the suttas. Definitely must study the suttas, otherwise he does not get right view. Recently I've heard about some very respected Thai Ajahn paying respect to some lay ascetic, which is quite surprising. So which the danger is if you don't study the suttas, then you don't get right view. But right view is the first factor of the Noble Eightfold Path that you must attain, because the suttas, there's one sutta, Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta 117, where the Buddha says the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path must start with right view. After you attain right view, that will bring you to right thoughts, which will bring you to right speech, which will bring you to right action, which will bring you to right livelihood, which will bring you to right effort, which will bring you to right recollection, which will bring you to right concentration. So it has to be practiced in that order. So if a person does not study the Buddha's words, then he follows his teacher, and his teacher does not have right view, so his disciple also does not have right view. And the danger I see nowadays, some of them are too proud of their tradition. Just because their teacher is famous, they rely on the name of their teacher. They don't understand our real teacher is not such a particular achan or a particular sayadaw, but the Buddha himself. The Buddha is our real teacher. So we must always go back to the Buddha. And also I see some monks in the forest tradition, sometimes they make a show of being ascetic. But sometimes some of the practice is actually wasting time. They go here, going there, they say on Tudong, but it's more like a sightseeing tour. They go here, they go all over the forest. I know one of our Malaysian monks, he stayed many years with a famous Thai Achan. Then when he came back, I asked him what method of meditation the teacher taught him. He said, no method. So you see, if the teacher doesn't teach you to meditate well, does not teach you the Dhamma, you follow such a teacher, go traveling in the forest and all that just to show how ascetic you are, then there's no point. That is not what the Buddha taught. So to practice the Dhamma Vinaya, we must understand what is in the Dhamma, what is in the Vinaya. If you don't understand the Buddha's words in the Dhamma and Vinaya, then you are not practicing the Buddha's Dhamma Vinaya. You are practicing the Achan's Dhamma Vinaya or the Sayadaw's Dhamma Vinaya, which is not the Buddha's Dhamma Vinaya. So we must always go back to the Buddha. Can I translate it?